Well, we think we found $10,000 toward the new generator, simply because it has to be set up special because
Yep.
it's over the aquifer. So there appears to be $10,000 in a grant that Annalise is going to apply for. So this is good. Everyone's coming in now. Hi, Annalise. And Jason's chair is there. And Heather didn't come in, so says it is joining. Okay. It's Heather having dinner. So it looks like Heather's having a little trouble getting in here. Hi, Jason.
Oops, hello. Didn't know.
We're waiting for Heather. She was on and then disappeared here.
I'm here, Catherine. I was just trying to get a background set.
Oh, very good. You're back. That's good.
We have Jason too.
Jason's here, yes. So
Are
the
we expecting
entire,
anyone else?
yeah, entire committee is here. I had sent out the notice to all the councilors as requested at the last council meeting. We have Annalise here also. So we're all set.
All right. So let's get going then. We are I cannot get the background thing to work tonight, so you'll that looks terrible. Let me get that off of there.
That's not too bad. Mine did that too. During a meeting, they were talking, they got distracted during a break and talked about outer space, and then my face started moving off the screen like something was coming in. It's because there wasn't enough energy in the computer to do everything.
All right, I'll just take that off and you get to look at my lovely attic office walls here. All right, so this evening we are meeting as the Ordinance Committee. Welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd. We're meeting by video conferencing technology due to the proclamation of state of civil emergency. This evening we have Catherine Ruth, Town Manager, Heather Donahue, Counselor and Mayor. We have Heat Lodgedice is here with us this evening, another counselor, Annalise Hafford from Oliver Associates, and Jason Hall, another counselor and committee member. And I don't see anybody else, so that's all I've got on my screen. So old business, the first item here is terms and conditions of the Pittsfield Waterworks. Catherine, did you have anything to add to the information that you had sent on to us, or do you want to just dive in and have Annalise start?
We had sent a package of information to you that Annalise had put together, which included both the rate increase, which we're not talking about this evening unless somebody had questions that they'd like us to take back and work on, and Pete's already given me a few. But we're here to talk about the actual ordinance type items and policies. So we have the terms and conditions. Annalise provided a good summary on that document, as well as we had the sewer ordinance, which had been depicted in several colors, but realistically, when the colors were put in, Annalise did a really good job with it, but some of the blue became red and red became blue. So we're just going to consider it, the whole document is the changes regardless of what the color is. So anything crossed out would be taken out. Anything that's underlined would be new. And then we'll talk about all those. So I would turn it over to Annalise to do a brief update, and then we can ask questions, committee members can ask questions. Thank you.
Okay. Take it away, Annalise. Oh, you're still on mute, Annalise.
There, is that better?
There we go.
All right. A lot of people want to mute me. So would you like me to go down through the document that I emailed and kind of hit the highlights on the major changes for the terms and conditions?
Is that the summary?
Or the summary that I sent, rather than go through the whole document. It's up to you guys.
Sure. Why don't we do that? Why don't we start with that? And then if we need to dig a little deeper, then we can.
Okay. All right. So I put together the document that I emailed the day after the council meeting, just to kind of give you a flavor for the biggest changes in the terms and conditions. And these are required by the PUC, and I think I mentioned that before. And they basically they're antiquated as they sit today, and they don't refer to all the correct regulations. And that's what we're trying to do, is get everything up to date. So we've updated, there's a bunch of references that have been updated in the terms and conditions. There's some sections in there of the original document that talked a lot about flat fee customers and customers that are kind of counted, like if you had so many toilets and sinks and things like that. So I took out that information because that's kind of a plumbing code thing. and isn't really appropriate for the present water department. And then the fees got updated inside the document, and I didn't know last time until the last meeting that you guys would like to see that like in the back. So it's just something that you adopt as a council and doesn't have to be affiliated with the terms and conditions. I didn't move those yet. I also need to talk to the PUC about doing that because they're rather particular, because there's only some items you're not allowed to charge over a certain amount, and those items would have to stay in here. Like return checks and things like that. The PUC requires a certain fee. Things like that I'd probably keep in here, but anything that's arbitrary and up to the town could be in a separate document. So some of the biggest changes, so charges for restoration and reconnection of service. So we wanted to add a provision in here that like some customer could call to have service restored, and there's actually a fee in the terms and conditions that you can charge. And we thought it would be nice to have a waiver of that because sometimes things come up, and I think it's nice to provide a waiver in a 5-year period. So that was something that we added to the terms and conditions. And that's more like if there's a shut off event, like say it's a seasonal shut off or something like that, or if a customer had a major issue in the home and asked the water department to come out and shut the service off. So this is something that you're allowed to charge, but I think it's good to have a waiver of that. The next item is a collection trip fee, and what that is, and right now the water department isn't doing active collections, but I would imagine that we would like to see that continue at some point in the future. If the water department goes out to collect money and the customer hands them the money, this is kind of like, I always call this kind of just add insult to injury, but it is permitted in the PUC regulations. You're allowed to charge them a fee for that kind of wasted trip where the customer hadn't paid in their time frame. Then you're going out to shut them off. There is allowance to charge them a fee to do that, but I thought it would be nice to provide a waiver once every 5 years of that fee, because I think it just helps the customer, and it's permitted, but we're not allowed to say, we have to define what that waiver will be. We can't just leave it open-ended because I've learned that through doing multiple terms and conditions. Under unauthorized use of water, we added some language that no customer can bypass the water meter or restore its water without permission from the water department. There has been cases where people have turned their own water on when they're not supposed to. And that's a really big no-no. It could cause a system damage. It's just not allowed, and it happens. It's not just in Pittsfield that it happens everywhere. So we want to make sure that that is called unauthorized use of water, because that's a stronger ability to shut somebody off for doing that. They can be shut off and billed based on the estimated amount of water that was taken if they did it with bypassing a meter. And it also allows us to charge fees for investigation of that incident because there is always time involved, with the town office time and the staff time researching these things. And if it is an egregious, unauthorized use of water, it allows the town to consider it a civil penalty. Not that you really want to get into that, but there has been cases in other communities where it was necessary to get into that. It just gives you the right to do that. We also added a little bit stronger language around tampering with utility property. There's been some valve seal mechanisms that have been tampered with and removed, and we just added that language. You already had that language in your terms and conditions. We just made it a little bit stronger. Such that that would be discouraged and customers would hopefully not do that. And if they did do it, we'd be able to do something about it. Under service interruptions, we're required, if we have a break, say we have a leak and we want to fix it, we're required to give customers notice. If it's an emergency, we don't have to. Emergencies are handled differently. There was language, the PUC allows a 24-hour notice, and the prior terms and conditions were a little bit confusing. They had 48 hours for something that you could wait and do. And then they had 24 hours for something that was more of a, hurry up and do. So I just changed it to 24 hours. And if we do, but our goal internally to the department, we'll try to do better than that. but I thought just having 1 hours for notice would make it easier for staff to understand what they're supposed to do. Again, we always try to give people 48 hours notice, but the rules say at least 24 hours notice. On meters, the meters section you had before is a little bit conflicting within itself. So what we're trying to do is define that meters will be 5/8 meters for all residential customers will be provided by the utility, other than like the new service charge, which is a very minor charge. And then we have all meters for businesses and customers larger than 5/8 meters shall be borne by the customer. And the reason for that is the smaller meters are readily available. The 5/8 meters, they're relatively inexpensive. They're around $150, and most utilities can afford to stock plenty of those and have them readily available. Meters for larger size customers can really mess up the budget. Some of the bigger facilities that are coming into Pittsfield with all the commercial establishments can run a couple $1,000s for those type of meters. And it's hard to know what to have in stock because you don't know what you're going to get asked to have. So it's really, and it really needs to be up to the customer to purchase the larger size meters. That's what we're trying to do with this. But if a residential customer does not take care of their meter, then they would be charged for a replacement meter. So the initial meter, when it's a new customer, would be provided at no cost. If they let it freeze up or they somehow damage it or whatever, then they would have to pay for a replacement meter. If there's old meters in the system, which I shouldn't say if, because there always is old meters in the system, when those are changed, that cost would be borne by the utility when it comes to residential meters, because we don't consider that damaged meters. That's just old utility equipment. So I know it was pretty much the same in some areas, but that's a little bit different than it was before. We strengthened a lot the requirement to have a warm, dry, and accessible place for the meter. And installations must meet utility standards. There's all kinds of situations in the area of improperly installed meters, stuff, underneath trailers and really poor configuration, curb stops that we can't get to, just a whole slew of stuff that just happened over the years that needs to be not allowed to happen anymore. It's really difficult to figure out, what belongs to whom. And meters that are installed underneath trailer skirts and stuff like that aren't safe really for employees to go access. There's been cases of people injured crawling underneath trailers. So we're trying to prevent improper installation.
Hello?
I think we're okay. Not sure.
Okay, I heard somebody say hello. And then also there is some cases where their water served through the front building and they're on the same lot, same ownership. The desire with that type of situation isn't really great, but I know those things exist, and we're trying to, if they get separated or sold, there needs to be an evaluation of that separation and see if there's any way to install separate services with separate meters. Because if you end up with two different owners having water through one service line and you have the back one not paying their bill, you have no way to shut them off. I know I sound like a mean person about this, but I'm not. I've just seen so many situations of not having the power to do things right. And at least this will give us an opportunity. And there's going to be situations where it's not going to be possible to separate them. But where there is, I think the desire would be to make that happen. And then under stop and waste valves, we've made it clear in the new terms and conditions that there would be a minimum of one stop valve inside the building. And, as the situation can allow, we would like to see a second stop valve on the other side of the meter. And that allows the utility to be able to remove the meter for changing it out safely and protects the homeowner from the water system by having the stop valve right where the plumbing enters the building. Generally speaking, that seems like common sense, but you wouldn't believe how many we find that don't have a meter inside the building. And then the old meter's in there and you can't get to it safely. So that's just something that's really common to require. Backflow prevention device testing, that rule's changed. It used to be that the utility was required to be the one to test the backflow devices or hire a backflow company to come in and test the devices, but the rule has changed. And now what is required is the utility, which is the water department, has to make sure the customer gets the device tested every year and gets a copy of that test. That's been a little bit difficult in a lot of the communities that I'm in because we have some customers who don't cooperate with us because they don't see why they have to be the one to test it. And then other places are wonderful about it. They just know that's what they're supposed to do. And what we'll be doing over time is sending out a list of the different choices of companies that the businesses can use. And these are just testable backflow devices. Sometimes residential customers or smaller commercial establishments have just the little check valve. Those aren't testable. So these are the ones that are meant to protect from hazards. They're often in restaurants and most of the commercial establishments that get, nowadays, all of the commercial establishments are supposed to have them. So it's up to us and to chase down the data, but it's up to the customer to pay for the backflow testing. So that's how the rule is written now. Under the next one, utility jobbing, there used to be quite a bit of language in the old terms and conditions about the water department going out and doing service line work for customers. And, and really there's two people in the water department. It's a very old system. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. I'm not saying every single thing that needs to happen is always happening, but it's getting done. They have no time to go out and do work on the side for customers. That is just not, I think it's not even good liability wise to be doing this work on private property. So we discussed, Catherine, Chris and I, about taking that out. We're not required to do it, and taking it out just makes it clear that the town's not doing that. So customers need to hire, a contractor to do their work. Not to say that we won't go troubleshoot leaks and things like that. We will help, but to actually digging on private property can get pretty messy, and it's not always clear to staff what they're allowed to do and what they're not. So we've just decided that it's not a good idea. Part of the problem here, if you see them on private property, sometimes the curb stops are on private property, and that's the water system's responsibility if that's the only place to shut it off. So today, for instance, they were in, I'm not sure what trailer park or trailer area, but a trailer was pulled out and it broke the curb stop. And I know they were on private property trying to shut the water off, but they had no choice. There was nothing there. So it's not like they were in somebody's cellar or doing something like that. But it's safer to have it this way. But some water systems really want to do utility jobbing because you can make a little money doing it. On the fire hydrants, and I mentioned this last time, there's some stricter language on notifications on use of the fire hydrants. We don't, in the wintertime especially, it's dangerous. There's been some cases of hydrants not properly drained out after they're used in an emergency basis. And also if they're used for training events and stuff like that, it's really good to be able to notify the water department that the fire hydrant was used, and then they can check it out and pump it out. Bulk water sales and swimming pools. We did put some language in the terms and conditions to require the use of a backflow device or an air gap for the use of hydrant water, and payment of the water according to the existing, whatever the rate schedule is at the time. We don't want to see people tying into a hydrant and dumping directly into a truck and contaminating the water supply. So there needs to be some controls around that and how that's done. It's not, these are not things that are to be taken lightly. We have had incidences where there's been contamination from doing things improperly. I'm not saying in Pittsfield, but in other systems. And then for transport of water, there would be a requirement that it would be by a transport truck that's approved by the utility, to make sure that it was a truck that was appropriate for that, for filling a swimming pool. And it requires a $50 fee for staff time plus the cost of the metered water charge. And then we did come up with some language around hydrant flow testing. So we have been asked several times to do some hydrant flow testing. The town itself doesn't have the equipment to do that, but Oliver Associates does. This allows the utility, not Oliver Associates, but the utility to charge a little bit of money to do that service, to do the hydrant flow testing. It's useful information for commercial establishments when they come on site. They want that information, but the utility there's quite a bit of time spent doing that type of work. And staff that isn't usually involved in the water department operations. So it provides the town the ability to recoup some of those costs for doing hydrant flow testing. And the location of meters in apartments, commercial buildings, mobile homes, parks, meter pits. So how I understand it is the Pittsfield really discourages meter pits, but there are situations where they are meter pits in town. So how this is written is new construction will be encouraged to have separate service lines and meters with the owner responsible for the cost of the meters and their installation. New mobile homes will have to locate meters in a safe place inside the house. We can't continue to allow them to be installed under the mobile homes. And it requires with the existing homes that the customer would remove the skirting from around the trailer before the water department staff would be there to do the work. The reason for that, obviously, there could be some liability with damaging the skirting if the water department removed it improperly. Also, the requirement would be for them to take care of the insulation, heat tape, and all of that. And we put language in there that the utility can shut off the water surface if these items are not done, which seems kind of, I guess, a little harsh, but we've had a lot of battles with these type of things. And then the master meter with the meter pit will have to have permission on a case-by-case basis prior to installation. That's basically because they're known to be a safety issue, a maintenance issue for the water system dealing with, and they're also very costly. We're trying to discourage that to be, some of the meter pits can be a confined space, and they're just not a best situation for the utility to manage. So in the terms and conditions don't say they can't be done, because I know there's going to be situations where it's impossible to separate everything out. So we tried to write it in a way that if it had to be done, it would take special permission from the town to be able to do it. And then plan reviews, we added a little bit stronger language about the customer having to pay the water department for the cost of the review. There's been several new commercial establishments come into Pittsfield that have required some consideration from the town to have somebody else look at it just to make sure things were done right. Sometimes the people that design some of these things are from another state and forget that there needs to be 5 feet of cover on sewer lines, or try to put a water meter on a sewer service. I saw that this year with one that Kathy had me review. I'm not trying to be mean, but it was just like, it was really good that Kathy had that reviewed, because it isn't a good thing. But this would allow the town to charge the commercial establishment, if they chose to, a fee for doing that review, such that you could recoup the costs of the consultant that you choose to use to do that work. It's not usually very expensive to have that done, but still it gives you a chance to not lose money on that. And then new service, does somebody, no, okay, I thought somebody asked a question. New service lines are the responsibility of the customer and shall be installed at the customer's expense, and just wanted to put that in there clearly. But the utility should be allowed to review the location of materials. The water department will own the service line from the main line to the curb stop. I think I mentioned this last week. That can be a little messy sometimes in trailer parks because sometimes curb stop is a valve, not just a curb stop. So if there's a main line in the road and then there's a main valve at the start of a big commercial development, and then inside the mobile home park, say there's a bunch of curb stops. That doesn't mean that Pittsfield owns each one of those many curb stops and all the water lines inside of that. The word curb stop can also mean valve. So I just want to make that clear to you because I know there's the trailer park with the trailers that have been built on top of the curb stops and such, and those aren't the town of Pittsfield. So Pittsfield has a valve before that location, but it's set up with separate metering. We just need to be more careful about how those things get implemented. And snow, ice, and other obstacles. There's been some safety issues in other water systems. I don't know about Pittsfield with the water department trying to dig up curb stops. And what this is trying to prevent is customers from trying to get certain things done in the wintertime. Because, you know, we're not trying to be difficult, but it'd be a lot better if you have a planned maintenance job for your plumbing to try not to do it in the middle of the winter when there's 6 feet of snow, or this winter, no snow, but ice and that type of thing. So this is putting it back on the customer to try to plan that accordingly. I know it seems rather harsh, but there has been some people that have fallen and gotten hurt pretty badly from trying to do this kind of thing. It is really hard to do this work in the wintertime on the water system. And that's very common. It's nothing specific to Pittsfield. So it's in a lot of the terms and conditions. And then I think I mentioned the temporary services also when it's impractical to provide water service. Say there's a damaged, service line, it's leaking all over the place and we want to shut it off to help the customer. This gives us the permission to help them temporarily with service from another building as long as that person is willing to do so. And that's something that definitely happens. Most every water system that I know has had to deal with something like that. So we put language in there. And then water abatements is always a really hard thing to get into, but it can also be very catastrophic to not have an abatement policy. So we talked about it a little bit and we thought some language in the terms and conditions would be helpful. So what we did for now, at least to get a discussion going on this, would be to have an abatement for a leak or a break once it was repaired, only if it was reported timely, and if they had an account with the town for at least a year at their present location and had not had any other abatements to do with this in the past 5 years. And we didn't want to lose all of the the money, so we just said to be the lesser of $200 or half the difference between the bill in question and the applicable billing quarter. And we've done this in a couple other water systems. We have a form for it, so it's easy for staff to figure out how to deal with this. And as long as this is tracked properly, I get it's a tracking thing and there's more work for people in the office to do. They might not like it, but it is nice to offer an abatement. I know many situations where, say an elderly person on Social Security had a catastrophic leak after the meter has resulted in some huge bills. I dealt with one last week in another community and it was like a $2,500 bill. And she's, was crying on the phone, and it was nice. They had an abatement policy and it was nice to be able to tell her that the city could help her out. So we were just thinking it would be good to add that into the terms and conditions. And I rushed right through it. There's a lot of red ink on the terms and conditions. So, but I don't think you want me to go into every word. Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So is there something in these terms and conditions that allow for the utilities that have damaged customers' lines?
If okay, well, I'll tell you how it will be dealt with if I know about it.
I have an example.
Okay.
Personal example.
Okay.
So for instance, the town had come in to put a new updated water meter in the residence that I had.
Mhm.
And when they tried to shut the water off, the valve broke.
The curb
so-
stop outside?
Yes, and so
okay.
they had to come up in the summertime and, because it happened in the wintertime that they tried to change it out.
Mhm.
But so when they were digging the curb stop up to replace it, they crushed the sewer line to the house,
Okay,
which it didn't find out till about a few days later when it had backed up into the basement. And so they had to come in and they had to cut a section and put a section in. But so now, is the utility responsible if I have any, or a customer has any problems with that in the future? That always had been, but I don't see anything in the terms and conditions that would.
it never really was in the terms and conditions, something like that. I mean, to me, it seems obvious if the utility damages customers' sewer lines, they should fix them. I mean,
Yep.
to me, I don't know that they knew they did that. I would
Oh,
think.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, well,
But I'm thinking in the
Yeah.
future, like 20
Yeah.
years down the road,
Mhm.
and the same people aren't in the water department that were there when this happened. Is there some kind of a record? Is there something that's, stated somewhere?
yeah, I mean, there is nothing that I know of that's stated in the terms and conditions or in the sewer ordinance that says specifically what you're giving me for an example. But I can tell you for sure, if that is something that a customer came to me with and it could be proven to, me that we were there, then we would treat the customer fairly and replace the sewer line in that location, because that isn't the intent of a water system. When they do work, it's supposed to be professional, and customers are supposed to be treated professionally. And that would not be anything that I would tolerate. And I'm sure if anybody had ever known about it, they wouldn't have tolerated it either. It just happened and then was a mess. So
Yeah, no,
I
it got corrected. I'm just thinking for future.
yeah,
I also know of another example on a house that the water main to the school had broke. And so they had to come dig it up in the wintertime. And that damaged the sewer line to a residential house.
Mhm.
And so there's a section of pipe that is not, you can see that it was replaced in regards to that.
Yeah, and part of the problem is the type of construction we're talking about is very difficult. And, where some of the lines aren't really known where they are, and you're digging in the heat of the moment to try to fix the water issue, things can get damaged even.
Oh, for sure. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure there was a provision in here that, stated if there was future problems or something to that customer, that it would be taken care of by the utility that damaged it originally.
I can tell you right now, there's nothing in here that specifically says that. But if that's something that needs to be added, that I don't think PUC would have a problem with that. We might want to think about how we word that to protect the town.
Yeah, I don't know how any wording would be. I just know that's
Yeah.
a couple of situations I've dealt with personally.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's not, I can see things like that happening in the heat of the moment. It's during a water leak, it can be pretty not a
Oh,
real
absolutely.
fun thing to be working on in the winter time, especially.
Yep.
Yep.
I had a quick question to kind of piggyback on Pete's point is, I've seen a few places, but where they had to dig up, say to the shut off on somebody's lawn. Is there wording in there that says that they'll replace, the person's lawn in kind? Because I've seen spots where they just dump gravel, that grass and stuff like that will never grow on. And I would think that the town or the utility would put some loam down and then reseed it, just so that the person's lawn is not a gravel pit type thing.
Right. Now
Is there any kind of language for that?
There is no language for that. These things seem to me, and these is just me, and almost like it should be a kind of an SOP for dig jobs, not in the terms and conditions that goes to PUC.
Okay.
This seems like a training thing and something that I can manage with the staff that is better placed there. Because I've never seen these things in terms and conditions, and I can assure you,
Yeah.
the people that work for me in some of these systems, it's an expectation that you treat your customers with dignity and you make their lawns go, as good as you can. Now, it is really
Right, yeah, I'm
difficult with grass seed. We struggle, as you remember, on some of the projects we used to be involved in, getting the grass to match what's there. But
Yeah, I'm not
I think we
talking
need
about-
to have an internal SOP that I draft and have Catherine, review, and then maybe something that we implement with utility staff. Because
Okay,
these are
yeah.
really good points, because they just make people mad. And that's not the intent. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure where it would be applicable, but that's great. Thank you.
yeah.
Catherine?
Yes, thank you. So for any water main or sewer main that's damaged, they're supposed to be reported to the town office, and normally we know about these. And then depending on what has happened, it's filed as an insurance claim. Under our commercial insurance, when it was MMA, we were told not to. And with the commercial insurance companies right now, they say to file all these no matter what. And then it gets straightened out in the field, whether it's the town's responsibility or the individuals, but that can differ. But all water sewer main damages and damages to the service lines are supposed to be reported. And I believe there was a brief period of time when the employee got excited in their new position and didn't report things for a month or so. But other than that, I think everything's been reported or should have been reported. And then the grass has always been an issue. They buy loom. We're paying bills for loom. So there should be grass growing, and we buy grass seed. Maybe we need a different type of grass seed. And so we won't mention North Main Street with the difficulty with the grass that we had there. That was crazy.
Other than that, it went good.
Other than that, the $1 million project went really well, but grass to grow.
Grass. Yeah.
If
So
we're bu-
Annalise, it sounds like both of those items can be incorporated into the SOP document as far as like what to do and what it should be repaired at,
Yeah.
as well as notification of the insurance company and the office should be in there too.
Yeah, we went over at the department head meeting all of the insurance requirements one last time so that everything can be done, because a few minor things got fixed in the field without reporting them, and we should have done, or the employees should have done the near miss because it was a near miss. And so we've gone over that in detail with everybody together, so there shouldn't be any further issues.
Okay. Jason, did you have another question?
Oh, no, just, I know it's not part of this meeting, but if we're buying the loom, then I can show you the couple spots that it's definitely gravel and
Yeah.
no grass is gonna grow on it, but that's just, that's a sidebar type thing, so.
After the meeting or sometime, just send me an email that says whose yards those are or the numbers on the house, and we can get them fixed.
Yep, okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Annalise regarding the terms and conditions for the water?
When you mentioned the trailer park and the town has the one shut off, like say a particular trailer has an issue and their shut off doesn't necessarily work, how is that gonna get shut off? Are you gonna shut down the entire trailer park, or?
No, there would still be a main line coming, the desire for this when it's new, there would still be a main line coming in with a valve. But that wouldn't be the valve. What we would desire after that is for everything to be separated within the trailer park, so everybody was metered separately, so there wasn't a meter pit. The valve because the valve's different than having a meter in a pit.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because the pipelines are down, like 6 feet down under the ground, and if you have a big master meter, those tend to be difficult to access, and they're also very expensive to keep maintained. Yes, Catherine.
Okay.
Ones I don't perceive to be an issue because they seem to be put in correctly, but we do have one where everything doesn't turn off properly, and we had an emergency there and had to shut the whole thing down, but got it back up going. And the people that own the trailer park have continued to work on the park to fix it. It just takes a while to fix everything. But yes, we do have one of those.
Yeah. And I think,
Any other?
I just
Sorry,
was
go
going to
ahead.
mention in time, you'll see, I hope more curb stops getting fixed and made accessible. So you're going to see more lawn being disturbed. So we want to make sure we get this SOP before summertime.
Well, it should be a simple thing to do. It's just a list of steps.
Yeah.
Steps they already have in their book, because I've seen it. So I think we'll just, the work list that Annalise that we're doing, we can just refer to that and it should be fine. So I was going to note that many of these items are in other terms and conditions I saw in other communities or water districts. And there are a few of these items that have happened. We have had the unauthorized use. We have had somebody continue to turn on their water. And we have had some damage to the water meters and actually the lines by activities, but these are far in between. You can have 100 customers with no issue and then have one that has an issue. I do think the abatements and waivers are going to be difficult. We still have people complaining over their $40 water bills, from when we increased them in 2009. And so there are a number of people that come to the counter that indicate their water bills are too high, and we go out and look and check the meter and everything, but they could have just a small leak. And so I would anticipate this will be used more than you think.
Yeah, I know, because I've managed 2 other fairly large water systems. And one of them in particular, it is utilized, and it just needs it's a tracking thing, and it's best to have a form and an Excel spreadsheet where you track it by map and lot and by name and customer number or whatever, so that you can keep track. But it is another, task that has to be done. Once we get to oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to back to the abatement issue. Is it possible to have it in there where it has to be like a minimum of like 25% out of line of what a normal bill would be? Like if you can look historically and see back what their bills are, and then there's one blip for a couple months, does that qualify for abatement, or would it have to be like a long-term, like over a 6-month period, have a really large increase? Or could you put in some language that it has to meet like a minimum threshold over what the normal bill would be in order to qualify for an abatement? Does there have to be some qualifying language in there?
You can put that in there, because that is in a couple policies that I've reviewed before, that you can have it be, you can't have like it be just 10% over your normal bill, your normal usage. It has to be at least X amount. We could discuss what that would be. I've seen 50%, stuff like that. But
Yeah,
that's,
I mean, because if somebody adds like an extra person to their household or something like that, that's going to affect it. And you don't want to have, somebody coming in and be like, oh, my water bill's 10% more than it usually is. And it's
it
really
has to
in
be,
line.
it has to be something that broke. It has to be, their languages, and it has to be something that they had to fix. Now, it can't be just usage, it can't be, and I know that would be up to the water department to help investigate, which makes it more work, but up to investigate why they're asking for the abatement. Is there a receipt from the repairs that were done? What evidence can they give us to show that? And usually there's a form where the customer has to sign off, but you can add to that a certain amount over, to make it encourage the customer not to just waste their once every 5-year thing on, a small little toilet leak or something. But you're correct.
Annalise, why don't we talk to the staff about the different types of items that we've had?
Yep.
They would know the majority, I think that I know, but let's talk to the people that actually wait on the counter, and not myself that gets called in on these, just so we can get what really goes on, and then we can figure out if we want to add something or not. I think we do need something. That was a good point, Heather.
Anything else on the water in terms and conditions? So what are the next steps on these changes? If the committee here this evening doesn't have any other questions to it, does this automatically go back to the full council? Do we need to go to the planning board for any of these? Because it has, no, okay. So it'll just go back to the full council as a package with the sewer, water, and anything else that comes from the ordinance or the planning board together.
It seems like we would keep the water and sewer together, just simply because people interested in water would be interested in sewer. It would bring more people into the meeting, and then Annalise would be available for both rather than going to 2 separate meetings.
And this needs PUC review Annalise, before we actually have like a public hearing for it?
We don't really have to have a public hearing for it. So
Oh.
once the council's happy with it, what we would do is we would have to upload it into the PUC. They have like a place where you upload your PUC report and different things like that. So we'd upload it, and then the staff would review it. And then what they want to see is the redlined copy nowadays, because they're quite busy as well. So they like seeing the redline copy to see what changed from before. And then I'll upload that in the final proposed version, and then they'll get back to me on any changes that they want made to the document. And then I would talk to the town before, agreeing to the changes. They're usually not, they're usually mandatory changes. When they want changes, they don't pick on like terms and stuff like that, but there are just certain things that they see that we may think is okay to write down in the terms and conditions, and under the law, they don't like it. So they might take a couple things out. We've done a bunch of these. This is very similar to the one that I recently did for Baileyville. So I know they accepted all of these things, but you never know. There may have been something in the existing document that wasn't what they want to see. So it'll be a little bit of an iteration. Sometimes it takes about a month or two to get it done.
And we were looking at like a May timeframe to bring it back to the council, if I remember right.
I don't remember honestly, but
Yes.
Jason, your hand was up earlier. Did you have another question for Annalise?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We're gonna get into the sewer portion next, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm good on that. I did, yeah, we're supposed to have I wrote down public hearing on May 18th. That's what we're shooting for, right?
That sounds correct. That's
That
so
sounds about right.
time for
the rate case, right? That's for the rates.
rate case. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's just for that.
Yeah, and during that though, I could, if you would feel more comfortable, I have no problem just talking about the terms and conditions after I do the presentation on the rates. I could do a little blip on updating the terms and conditions if you think that would be, something you'd rather do before I upload it to PUC. We're not required to do that, but if you'd like me to, that's up to you guys.
I think if you're already there and if people have questions, it makes sense just to discuss it. And if you've already heard back from them and uploaded it and whatever, and it's ready for us, then we can always discuss it that evening. Does that fit in with the timeline, Catherine?
Oh, we can, it certainly does. The terms and conditions could go to the counselors earlier, and actually the sewer ordinance could, but that brings us to, do we want to do all three of these items together? Because people might be interested in them, and it will save time.
I think it makes sense too.
And if we do, we'd be delaying the sewer ordinance and the terms and conditions a bit, but I mean, they're items that have been this way for many years without really any issues. So I think they should all be done together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're talking about presenting the rate increase in the same evening on May 18th as in the terms and conditions and sewer ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And on the terms and conditions and sewer ordinance, because the general public isn't going to want to hear me rattle on for 5 hours, probably a condensed version of the highlights and why we updated it. And then they might have questions that they want to ask. I think that might be a good idea.
People would likely have specific questions if they Zoom into the meeting or come to the meeting. That means they have a question.
Okay.
I think that summary was really nice. That made it a lot easier. It'd be easier for the public too.
Okay, before the public sees it, I might want to check some of the typos I saw when I looked it over tonight. I didn't notice them when I was typing it. I guess they're real words because spell check didn't notice it either.
Yeah.
That's what drafts are for, right?
Right?
All right. Are we good to move on to the sewer use ordinance?
Yes, as soon as I let my dog out of here because he's crying. Sorry. Usually that doesn't happen, but okay. All right, so on the sewer ordinance.
So we bring up everything that was out of date, and then to add in areas that DEP had talked to us about, as well as correct items that had been issues before. And then I think the main reason why this came up is who would dig up and pay for certain parts of the sewer line, and where would it go when you hook in. That's what started all this. And then we decided, since it's a 1976 ordinance, we should just go forward and update it. And we did leave it the way that it had been for decades, on who was responsible for what. We didn't change that, but we made it clearer. But we did a lot of updates with issues that had come up throughout time, not dramatic items or real big issues, because we were able to resolve them. But there were issues with certain situations that have been addressed in here that could save the money, time, and insurance claims, and danger to employees in the future. So we fixed everything we could.
Do you want me to go through and kind of catch the highlights, or
I think
Or dive right in.
dive right in? Okay. So as Catherine mentioned, it really wasn't as major of updates as the terms and conditions, but there were some key items. And so one of the things that seems to be a pretty key item in the ordinance, and we talked about it a little bit during the council meeting, is that the ordinance does require that a property connect to the public sewer if it becomes available. There are some waivers in the ordinance that help a property owner if they're in a DOT street, or if the sewer is a certain amount of distance away from the home. So I know there's some concern with that. I know there's some provisions, if, I'll just throw it out there, that this requires somebody to do it, even if they have a septic system that is working. There are other communities who have the same language, but they add a 10-year time frame that the septic system would continue to operate. And if that were then to be found after that 10 years, that's all it gives you 10 years to connect. It gives you more time. So there's some options of language that could be added in here that I think that's what I kind of wanted to bring to the table. If that wasn't acceptable, I don't know of examples in Pittsfield of where this is happening to be able to tell you its relevance and impact to the public. That's something I don't feel like I know, because there hasn't been, right now, I don't know if there's anybody that's near a sewer system that's on a septic system that this would impact. So that's why I'm just coming up with ideas to take the pain away.
Yeah, I'd feel a little more comfortable with somebody having the option of hooking in rather than having it be mandated, especially if you're saying it's their responsibility to pay for it. Definitely having a period of time in order to plan on doing something like that would be preferable. And it seems like this would be more applicable if we were to say extend the sewer service out, like down Route 100 further, or up Higgins Road or something like that, then that's when that would apply.
Right. Right now, the way, and I didn't think about this when I reviewed it. This came up when I was asked, I think you asked at the last meeting about this, if everybody would then have to tie in. I think it's good to get people tied in, because it is known that septic systems fail and people don't properly take care of them. And it is, when a town spends money, extending a sewer down a road, the intent is to get revenue from that and people to hook in. And it is better for the environment if people are hooked in. But the language that I found basically says, upon inspection and to the satisfaction of the LPI, the city or town may allow the continued use of a private wastewater disposal system for the duration of its useful life, up to a period not exceeding 10 years from the date a public sewer became available. So I was because I could sense if this might be something that might not go over very well, maybe some language like that could be added into it. And then and also any system that's failed would automatically have to be hooked in.
I could see that with any system failing, but I don't think we should be forcing people that have good adequate systems to convert over to a town sewer just because. That's my opinion.
So this was in here before, when the sewer lines were put in several locations, people were required to hook in. That was back in the 1990s, late 1990s. There were multiple.
Yeah.
And so there are, to my knowledge, 3 people not hooked into the sewer, which the town decided not to due to a financial situation. To my knowledge, there isn't anything else, but we haven't done any sewer extensions since then.
One of them just got taken care of, right? Because it was on the where the new Walgreens site is. Because that one had a septic.
Right.
So that one just got taken care of. So that means we're down to 2, or was that one not included?
We're down to 2 unless there's something that we don't know about. We did find when I got here a few people that weren't being billed for sewer or water, so for a few years. So we hooked them up. Hopefully there's nobody else because we did a survey then.
What is that section that you're actually referring to? Could you point me to that section, the section number?
It's on 9-7, section 304.
304.
Yeah, I should say 304.
Yeah, I took it out of some ordinances. There were several ordinances that had something similar. I wasn't sure if the town council should be the one that gives the exemption or if it just would be, you know, done internally in the office. So I left it the way it was in one of the ordinances that had town council. Another one had the plumbing inspector and one had the water department.
Because you actually made it more lenient than what it was by adding the waivers. Yeah.
Across that situation that the town just took care of itself back in the 90s.
And this is only going to be applicable if the town extends any sewer. Is that correct? Other than those other two people that we know of?
And then
Does the town, do we anticipate extending sewer lines any, like, I know that might not be the way you can do it, but I mean, is there any plans to do that in the near future in our any of our plans on the website or anything?
Yeah, it's almost all we need to do replacement. There was a study done back in approximately 2009 that identified about $9 million worth of projects that needed to be done in the sewer system. And we were able to do a massive amount for less than the amount, but there's still a lot of lines that need to be replaced. So I assume that we would do replacements before we went out to different areas just because of the finances of the situation. There is a water line that should be put in so that we have a second or a back entrance from the wells, and that's a project that's on the list. That would be a new water line, but I don't think it would have people hooked to it. It's mostly to protect the town in case the main line collapsed or was blocked. We could get the water by instead of having a big problem. So Annalise, do you remember anything in all the projects that were written up? I don't remember any.
No, the only thing I could think of, and I wouldn't know this off the top of my head, but if say there's a cross-country sewer line that went behind some homes and then say you move it out into the street and you found somebody wasn't hooked to it. But I think most everybody is hooked to a sewer line somewhere in town where most of the work is taking place. I don't see this really impacting too many people, really. I know the language that was added made it more lenient, but I just thought of it this afternoon when I was thinking about the ordinance, this other language that might make it even a little more helpful, because if somebody just installed a septic system, that'd be their luck, right? And then the town decides to extend the sewer. They just spent $20,000 on a septic system. I could see that being a big debate, but I don't think it's very likely all these things are going to happen. Yeah. So that was one of the differences, and I guess I didn't make it very clear. It was actually made more lenient than it was originally. And I think another good thing that the ordinance adds, if we're moving on to that, is in section 402, language to add a special service charge for high-strength discharges. It doesn't really exactly say how that's going to be calculated, which I think is a good idea to leave it general. But if they were a brewery or some kind of a dairy-related type of commercial entity, those do have high-strength discharges. And I would think that you would want to evaluate that and assess them a higher rate, a fee than the average, commercial or residential discharger whose strength of their wastewater is much less concentrated. The more concentrated discharges do cost the sewer system more money long-term, and I think they should be, I think this is really good language to add to the ordinance.
So this
And
is,
then, yeah, oh, go on.
this is a major item, a major commercial entity that comes in because the BODs have been an issue with a few items, a few types of businesses, and we've had to deal with that in the past and get it straightened out. But we were able to do it internally, and then they do testing now.
And then the next item on that same section, there was some language added for abatements. And this one does have that it has 100%. So what you were talking about earlier, Heather, the language in there basically says if it exceeds 100% of the average quarterly building for the preceding 3 quarters, then that could be potentially adjusted. And then I added language, this abatement can only be permitted once every 5 years for this customer at any location in the system. The last sentence in that paragraph needs to be crossed off. I added something in there from the water side that doesn't apply because it contradicts some prior language, but I think it's good to allow sewer abatements as well. I know once you go down the slippery slope of abatements is something that we can talk about. It does make more work, but there is always something that comes up that I think it's nice to provide a once every 5-year abatement. So this has 100%. I suggest if we use a percentage, we make them both be the same. I'm not sure, I don't know what's the right number, but we can talk about that, but they should both be the same so there's no confusion.
Are sewer and water usage usually correlated? Is there like a strong correlation between how much water someone uses and what the sewer usage is as well? I mean,
it depends. I mean, for residential, typically, yes, it's about the same. I mean, what comes in the house generally goes out. Gardening, obviously, that's another slippery slope. We didn't really talk about that. Some systems do allow sub-meters. That isn't something we really suggest that you get into unless you already started down that and you haven't. So that commercial entities, car wash, sometimes there's a chance they might, have less going down the drain than what they use coming in. And there are some, systems that are connected to water and not sewer or vice versa. But generally speaking, as a whole, the water usage in Pittsfield is pretty much the same as the sewer usage, pretty much.
so if somebody has a need for an abatement on a water usage, does that mean that they're going to have a need for an abatement on a sewer usage as well? Or would the water usage be that there might be, I mean, you wouldn't have necessarily a leak, or maybe you could, I don't know, I guess you can have a leak anywhere, but if you're talking about water usage, then I don't know what I'm asking. It seems
I know
like
what you're
if you have
asking.
one, you're going to have the other.
Sometimes.
Maybe it's an either or situation. And this is a very basic question on how our sewer billing works from somebody that's never had a sewer bill. Is there an actual meter on the sewer lines to tell you how much somebody is charged each month, or is it a flat rate?
It's based on water generally.
Mhm,
So it's tied to the water usage then anyway.
mhm.
I guess if you have a massive discrepancy, it's kind of a telltale that there's something not quite right. You have a leak, most likely, right? You know, if the water bill's $200 and the sewer bill's, you know, $50, it's leaking out somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time what happens is the sewer is going to be the same. It's going to be based on the same number as the water. So like, you're,
Oh, right,
you know what I'm
right,
saying? Because
right.
you're
Yeah, it's
basing
not telling
the,
you that.
yeah,
Right.
you're basing the sewer on the water usage.
Yeah.
But sometimes something could happen with one where you've actually really used the water, so you charge them the use of the water, but it didn't go into the sewer. So that's an example of an abatement that you might let somebody have.
Fill in your swimming pool.
Right, well, that's true. Yeah, I don't have one of those. But yeah, that's perfect example.
Vegetable gardens, stuff like that, I would imagine.
Right, but I don't think we're looking to go down that route.
Right, yeah,
It's
that's
a
what you just said.
huge burden. I mean, you're
Yeah.
gonna, with handling sub meters in the office and just, I don't see going there if you're not wanting to.
No.
People that go there really want to. I mean, I'm not leaving, but just.
I don't know, I want to go there.
Yeah, no, no. So I wanted to note that we've already had as a policy for sewer charges that was in effect in the year 2000, in which the quarterly sewer charge exceeded 100% of the average quarterly billing for the preceding 3 quarters, it would be reviewed for adjustment. So those went to myself. We didn't have a lot of them. And of course, we had to explore them and everything. And if people created their situation, we did not give them an abatement if they deliberately smashed up stuff, which was rare, but did happen. So these were rare when they came in. So that was already in the ordinance.
So Catherine,
Right,
is
right.
that kind of like an internal SOP like we were talking about earlier with the water? Like it would automatically trigger a review, and that's an internal policy within the water department that
We-
happens automatically.
Review them. When we see these, we pick them up from the readings that come in. And then if they're way off over a certain percentage, we check with the people, we check into the situation to see what's going on. Sometimes the people are just using a lot more water and they tell us that, but sometimes that means there's a problem. We don't get all of them, but if there's a massive increase on the bills, there's a notice that comes up before we print the bills, and we explore as much as we can. Sometimes people don't call us back, and after a few, 5 phone calls, you're going to just go ahead and bill them. And generally they did use the water, but if they didn't, and there's an issue with the sewer part, we've always had this abatement that we can utilize after we explore what's going on. So we've had a first exploration anyway, as much as we can, when the bills are really out of whack, usually starting with the water bills and then getting to the sewer bills. But the only one we had the ability to abate was actually in the sewer ordinance.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Catherine.
it was like a policy attached to the old ordinance. Yeah.
Obviously, because after the ordinance was passed, years went by and then something went amiss. And I think it had something to do with being in one of the fraternal organizations and something running excessively, and there was no way to abate it. And then it got added on as a policy because they were a nonprofit.
Okay.
Some of the other items in the ordinance was making it very clear what is expected for construction. The prior ordinance didn't have a lot of language on construction materials and things like that. And Catherine found a lot of good language to add into the ordinance. I've seen sometimes people leave this in the back as like an attachment, but I think it fit nicely within the existing ordinance, the way that you did it. So I didn't make any suggestions for putting it in the back of the ordinance. So it made it a lot stronger. So there's some, expectation to do things correctly. And then I added a little bit of language about having the superintendent have the right to tell a customer that 4-inch sewer service isn't large enough, like some commercial entities or an apartment complex or something like that. So we added some language in there. Kind of most of that's under section 506. And then there's a lot in there about backfill and no big rocks and stuff like that, which is very important. And then there's also makes it clear that sewer extensions must be paid for by customers. And where this today was a demolished trailer, but it ruined a curb stop. But this would be language about demolished buildings properly plugging or capping the sewer services. We actually did a sewer study in a community, it wasn't Pittsfield, and found that the whole reason why the street had backed up too much water during rain events was a dismantled trailer park where they left all the pads, trailer pads there, and never plugged a single one of the the connections to the sewer. We smoke tested it, and there was like 10 different locations where smoke came out of the ground. So it's kind of to that extent, you know, it's important not to have excess water going into the sewer.
We did find when we went into a property that was donated to the town that there was a unplugged, one unplugged trailer location that was creating water problems. So it doesn't take many.
No, it doesn't. And under section 606, there's new language, kind of, there was always language about some grease stuff, but stronger language about grease, oil, and sand interceptors. The ordinance always had a requirement to not discharge more than 100 milligrams per liter of oil and grease type substances, but didn't really talk specifically about the requirement to put in a grease, oil, and sand interceptor trap. So I think that's really good language. Those the grease can really raise havoc with the sewer system and cause a lot of pluggage as soon as it leaves a restaurant, gets into the sewer system, it cools off and then plugs up the piping. There's many examples of cities and towns fighting with that issue, and really it's a pretty basic thing that's required. It's never easy to manage, I will say, to after the fact manage. It's always better when you have new entities coming in, making it happen then, always easier. We're trying in another community to make the restaurants put them in after the fact, and that's just not pretty. So it's always best to have the language in here and try to deal with it from the beginning. And then there's a stronger language for industrial facilities, being able to monitor, keeping records, doing maintenance, and allowing the superintendent to inspect and that type of thing. So that's really important on the sewer ordinance under section 608. It does require the town to reject certain wastes and require payment for certain charges.
So I hope that I did okay with some of these because I had to read multiple ordinances and then take the language out that seemed the most applicable. But this was an item that our former sewer inspector had brought up. They kept saying we needed a whole pretreatment program, and you know, we have been very fortunate. And because we have the lagoon system and the types of businesses we've had, we haven't had to have a big expensive pretreatment program. So we would just set up rules and then deal with the few companies that needed items, and they did their monitoring after we explained it out. So it seemed a good idea to put some language in here, but not get too carried away, but protect the town and the businesses and everybody else. And also so that DEP will know that we did address the issue in a reasonable fashion. So hopefully that language is okay, Annalise.
Yeah, I thought the language was good. If you had asked me to completely do the ordinance from scratch, you probably would have gotten maybe 3 pages where you made it a concise half a page, but it really doesn't say anything really more. It just says it in the same thing in many different ways, and it makes it very confusing. So I think sometimes it's good to have it shorter and clearer. It seems to have all the things in there for what you're dealing with. And it does require, you know, larger facilities to tie in with a manhole. So like a large commercial establishment, it's really good to have a sampling manhole. It's a place to inspect and be able to safely collect samples. So that's the ordinance does require that, which is good.
So everybody we've asked to do that, without that, and the ordinance has done it. We've just been very fortunate. Everybody has done what we've asked, but it's good to put these items in. So somebody new coming in can just read it and know, and then it's not a negotiation process or trying to explain it out, without a proper language.
Yeah, and then I think I mentioned last time too, it just updates the enforcement actions regarding civil penalty and that there can be a violation payment of $100 and then a maximum penalty of $2,500. And it says basically it's a per day basis that the penalty would go on. So if you're trying to enforce an issue that's serious enough, the town has the right to charge penalties. I don't know if you've ever had to do that or not, but I do know of some communities having to charge penalties for issues. I think generally people try to work it out without going there.
Annalise, is that one of the things that's required by PUC, or is that something that would fall underneath our current fee schedule type disclaimer on things?
The sewer ordinance is really more under as a state statute kind of a thing, and then required more by like Catherine was saying, the treatment plant and wastewater inspection type people from DEP like to see a sewer ordinance. But the language that the fee numbers, I think came from another ordinance, but it refers to the state statute. But I believe there is a maximum amount of 2,500 that's in the statute. And so they're in the ordinance, those numbers. Okay. I don't know if I was very clear, but this is very common. This is language I've seen in 3 of the ordinances that we wrote in the last 5 years. So it's very common, newer language. And that's really on the sewer side. There really wasn't huge changes in the ordinance at all. It was more just adding to what was there already.
Any other questions, counselors?
We tried to keep this as short as we could. When I went and looked at sewer ordinances to help out, they were either approximately this size, 20 or so pages, or they're over 100 pages, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
Something that was user friendly that could be understood.
With the sewer, the town, the homeowner owns to the main, correct? Which is typically somewhere in the road.
Yeah,
that's correct. I don't necessarily love that, or I don't know how you would word it, but like say the town, we're going to go ahead and replace Chinquette Street. We're going to pave Chinquette Street this year. And then next year my sewer gets backed up and they got to come and replace that. And I got to rip out to the middle of the road. And the road is something we just put in. It looked nice for a year, or 6 months or whatever it might be. And now it's got a big patchwork in the middle of it. Is there a way we can kind of plan for, okay, the town's going to replace Chinquette Street. So the year ahead of time, they're going to inspect the kind of the sewer attachments or the sewer to the curb. And then, if it needs to be replaced, they replace it. That way the homeowner doesn't need to rip it up in 6 months and make the road look kind of, just not look that great after the fact. I don't really know how to word it, but do you kind of know what I'm getting at, I guess? On the water side, the town owns to the curb. Can we make the sewer the same situation so you don't have a brand new road or a road being ripped up for no particular reason? Well, not.
It kind of sounds like that would be on the town to do the planning for that ahead of time. If we know we're going to be paving a road downtown, we should be looking at the services that might be under that road a year or 2 ahead of time and make plans on the water sewer end of things to kind of like head off those problems before paving the road. I see what you mean as far as, obviously if you own a house, you don't want to have to pay to rip up the road and then repair all that either. And I don't think that that makes sense because, you know, as a homeowner, you don't have any control over where that connection is. You know, your house might connect out in the middle of the road and then it might take a 90-degree turn around the corner and it runs across your neighbor's front yard and it's only, you know, 30 feet off of their house or something. So they don't have to incur that cost of ripping up a road.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing is to make them the same. But that adds cost to the to the town too.
Sewer budget, yes, which we weren't going to increase the rates for. So I think that would be the issue. Before we change that, if we're going to change that or look at it, we should do some calculations because we didn't want to change the sewer rate. We wanted to use the $85,000 that was freed up from not having to put the money in the USDA loan agreement that was the requirement to get the loan, the massive loan grant over $3 million back in 2010. So now that we have that, we thought that will fix it so we can do a project, you know, a couple of debt services. But if we're going to add an additional cost and look at roads that have like the concrete base onto them, like Main Street, I mean, if we had to go out and pay for one of those, which is unfortunate, anyone would have to, I mean, we would have to have some serious money. So I'm not even sure how we would study this to figure out.
And the homeowner, I mean, I don't know. I didn't know that they had a concrete base, but
Yeah, there is. See, that's the problem on Main Street. It's not right that the citizen has to do it, but it's not right the town has to do it. It's like a major thing, which you even when you go to ask DOT, they won't even give you permission to do it unless it's, you know, sewage running all over the place. It can't be just to fix something. So that's been an issue anyway for
But-
people in the town.
I think on the main, isn't it on the main roads? It doesn't really cross or go out into the street, does it? Isn't it like on the side or not even in the right?
They just moved it to the center of the street on
And some
one
was-
of the streets.
Mhm.
On, oh, they did?
When they redid it, they moved it to the center. Yeah. So now both people on both sides of the road would have to dig to the center of the road.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it just depends on the road and what else is there on where the things end up getting placed.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just, I just don't necessarily agree with it. I mean, the town says they own, you know, 10 feet onto your lawn or, you know, they have a right of way to the road, but it seems like they have the right of way to the road when it's convenient for the town and not necessarily the homeowner.
Well, it's a state law that we're stuck with whatever the right of ways are, you know, on new
Right,
road
I'm not,
different.
yeah, but I mean, we have the ability to say, okay, the town's gonna own the sewer to the curb stop, just like the town owns the water to the curb stop. I'm just not sure if, I don't know, I think it's worth looking into, but maybe I'm in the minority, I don't know.
I think, I don't think you are, but I think we'd have to study this just to make sure we don't have all of a sudden have to fix, you know, 20 or 30 items that actually are out there. You know, so we would have to figure out as a town if we wanted to do that. And do we want it to change the sewer rate or would it change the sewer rate? I think it would depend on where they were. I myself had to dig up a road shortly after I moved in. And the sewer line had to be dug up out into the middle of the road. So I do understand this.
Yeah,
And I think it's good before roads are paved, and I think that's kind of what the town's trying to do on some of the projects is do a video of the internal of the sewer before the road work is done and just make a, you know, kind of an assessment of what does the general sewer system look like. That's kind of happening right now anyways, and with the newer projects, you know, if the sewer was collapsing, I would imagine that it probably wouldn't be a popular idea to just go pave the road without fixing the sewer. And I know the practice always has been in Pittsfield when it's doing a brand new job to go to the right of way. It doesn't change the ownership of anything. That's how it had been. But the brand new sewers that are installed do have services to the right of way. So it's done differently, different towns. I'm not going to tell you guys how to do it because I work in a bunch of different towns and people all do it differently. It's always a bone of contention, no matter how you do it.
New sewer lines are not an issue, and the state, if we get the drinking water loan has allowed us to put that in as a cost. So that would be sensible, because otherwise you have everybody out there with plumbers running around, and that would, and contractors, and that would be a mess, basically. So why don't Annalise and I talk about with the water sewer department, how would we figure out what the cost of this would be, or an estimate? So I don't think this is if my sewer line was the only one replaced on my road and they all went in at the same time, there's 6 other houses up there. So what condition are they in? There's a huge flow problem up on that road. So, that's just one little road. So,
How many, just to throw this out there, how many homeowners have had to replace their service to the main that you can think of?
I've had to do one.
Me?
me?
Yeah, I can think of at least a few for sure.
Well, the reason
I
I
don't-
ask that is how happy are they going to be if they find out that it changes, I guess. I'm just asking.
I can tell you my grandfather won't be too happy, because he lives on Summer Street, and he had to replace to the center of Chester Street, which is over a block away.
Mhm.
Which I don't know, I feel like maybe he was entitled to an abatement or something, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know maybe it will upset those folk, but
All right, we can look at this. Would it be if it's an extraordinary condition? That's an extraordinary one. Mine was just out to the middle of the road on a regular road, which was not that expensive. But if you went to another road, I mean, you're going all the way down through, and if it was across country, I mean, there's different situations. Is it like an abatement because of the conditions?
Maybe it needs to be like a 50-50.
Mhm. All right, we'll look at this and some other regulations and see. This was the item that started all of this. All I did, I didn't change what was there. I made it clearer because it had one sentence area that was the controlling sentence by legal review, and then it had another one that was kind of causing problems on how it was written. And it had it as though everything that got done, the sewer department was going out and doing all these jobs on private property, which we're not supposed to be doing. It shouldn't be doing. So we fixed that.
yeah,
All right.
I'm not trying to be a pain or anything. I was just kind of bringing up the conversation, I guess.
No, that's fine.
I'm not that educated on all this stuff, so.
That's been brought up by, Pete had mentioned it, and MCI has some problems up there with their sewer lines running into Main Street, I've been told. So, there's some major items that, may need help. So
Right.
we should look at that. And then we have all the people that have replaced their lines, like, it looks like the 3 of us.
So this item looks like it definitely needs more work done on it. And then would that come back to the ordinance committee again before going to the council, or would we just
I
have
think
some adjustments made and then go right to the council in the interest of
it would
time?
have to come back. This is a controversial item, and it will have costs attached, but I'm beginning to think it's not a one way to do it, because you have to go and dig up Main Street. That's like an extraordinary situation because of the concrete versus like Chinquette Street or my street. They were regular streets. But if somebody had to go to the next road and go down a block, that's an extraordinary condition. So I wonder, we don't want to make it too complicated, but it seems like it's the extraordinary ones that are the issue.
It almost seems like the town should pay from the main to the curb stop, because that's the heavy duty stuff and it's not something that a homeowner could really do themselves. And the homeowner should pay from the curb stop to the home.
So if we did that, we definitely would have to budget more money. So that's
Right.
something what we could, Annalise, we could talk to towns that actually do this and see,
Yeah, I
that-
mean, I can talk to probably 10 that I'm involved with, and they'd all do it differently. But I could, I have that information just looking at the ordinances that we have copies of and talking to them. Yeah, it's just done differently. The same reasons why you're having a hard time with this is the reasons why it's done differently every place.
it's done, majority has it the way we're set up, but it's not a huge majority. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Belfast does it exactly how you're doing it. So the part that differs in some communities is like the maintenance side of it. If it's clogged up, the utility kind of considers the clog coming from the customer, so that the customer has to pay to flush the whole service to the main. But maybe there could be some compromise on the construction side of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we'll look this over. So this one was in, I think, pretty good shape, and the terms and conditions are, we just had an item we were going to look at in the terms and conditions. And then this is the main item that started all this, basically. But I think the sewer ordinance is in a lot better shape. We were able to use it, and even though we didn't have maybe the best language, people all did work with us. I can't remember something we didn't solve. The only item that I know of that doesn't really fall under this is that we have some cross-country lines running behind houses where the people never got hooked up because they couldn't. I think because a South Main Street one, it's probably because the concrete was under the road, but I'm not sure. And then we have a couple of other roads where most people got moved out front, but some people must have refused, and they're still hooked to old sewer lines that were stormwater drain lines or something, or supposed to be. So we've been moving them out, having them take care of it. We go help them to make sure it gets done properly, overseeing it. So there's a few of those out there. I'm not sure if I don't think we're affecting them by what we are doing here, because they're old ones that were left on a sort of abandoned sewer lines.
Right, and I think you acknowledge that's the town's mains, those cross-country lines. Yeah. It'd be great to get those people out of them if at all possible.
So we moved out as many as we could on the lines that we could, but the Main Street one is an issue. And as you know, when you get up there to do the camera work, it's blocked. We've tried to do the camera before, so maybe if it's flushed out really heavily, but we also don't want to have a major problem too. So that may be an issue with up in that area.
Sorry to laugh about it, but I'm envisioning what might happen.
Yeah, it's not a good situation.
No, it isn't.
But all towns have them. We just seem to have more of them than most towns. I've seen this before, but not anything like this.
Yeah, and they're not on maps. They're kind of like,
Correct. They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the map that everybody got was the original map. It's not the map that we've drawn on in the office, in which they've drawn on all the extra lines that they found. So at some point, as one of the projects that all of our associates will do when it fits in and we get enough information, is we'll create a new map and town will go print it and everything.
that wouldn't be much to do. We'll make sure it's up to date with the stuff that we know, that we were involved in. And then as more projects are done in town, if we get copies of the as-built from the other consultants, we can actually add it to the map for you. It would be easy for us to do that.
And hopefully we'll be able to do some sewer projects. We're likely going to submit some clean water state revolving loan projects, and just see how things fly. Those are the ones I mentioned at the council meeting that we don't usually score well on, but we can still try a few. And we are looking at, how to deal with Main Street right now. I mean, I've been told that there's just a couple of areas that there's an issue, and that came up when we had the informational session, whether you would try to replace the whole sewer line. That would be a massive cost. And in the past, it had been talked about not doing it, but we'll do the testing again to the areas that weren't tested, and then retest areas and see what's there. It's been 10 years for the areas that were retested in town. So that'll be interesting. So hopefully we can do some projects. But if we're going to do replacements of lines, we are going to have to figure out how to budget for that, so we can look at other towns and see what they deal with.
Yeah, but we'll do that. I just have a quick question on that area. Is there concrete in the road in that area in front of the sidewalk, that whole area of Main Street, or is that
under part of Main Street?
okay?
Yeah, where you see the pieces all come together,
Yeah.
come apart. That's where all the concrete blocks are.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay. I
That's,
was doing the cost estimate for that, for the application, and yeah,
that's why DOT's never touched it.
right, yeah.
So the other section that we did kind of discuss, but kind of got left up in the air to me, is the people connecting, being forced to come off their septic systems. Where do we end up with that?
Annalise had some new language that maybe gave them 10 years to hook up. Likely because it would fail, could fail in that period of time. I think that the town required them to hook up before, but there were a few people left. I think they did this maybe at the council level or in the office, and they just didn't hook them up because they didn't have the finances. I'm not sure what went on, but there were a few people not hooked up when I got here on
I
roads.
know that we have a couple, but I was thinking more in the future, if we happen to extend lines
Mhm.
into areas where people have septic systems, I think it's not fair to them to force them to abandon their septic systems if they're in good working order.
So some people will want to hook up, so that's good. Then, how do we deal with the others?
I can add language that's not in here right now, because we have example of that about the failure, so that systems that have failed would need to hook up.
That's all. Yeah, that's an obvious one there.
Yes, very obvious, but yeah, but I just want to make sure I say it so that we all agree on it.
Yeah.
And then, what do you feel about a timeline for systems that are working?
I just not sure how you'd assess that because, like you said, for instance, you might have somebody that just put one in and they could go for many, many years,
Mhm.
a lot more than 10.
Is it something that the local plumbing inspector could, or whatever code or whatever, could check it out? Some language like that. I've seen that, language that the town would verify that the septic system was in good working order. And those systems that were deemed to be in good working order were allowed to stay disconnected until such time they weren't. But then that puts a lot of work back on the town to monitor that. So there's some disadvantages of doing that.
Yeah.
And then the thing, well, there's advantages and disadvantages of everything, because then the customer that just put his septic system in would then get to pay the cost of connecting his septic system, his plumbing to the sewer. Would the town go catch it there? I've done it both ways. That's why I'm kind of throwing it out there so we all think about this. Usually the septic system would be, not always, but in the back of the house. So then the plumbing's going out the back, and to get the people, there's the cost to get the plumbing out towards the road. So it's, once we start talking about this, it starts to get messier. We usually use the 10-year language in the ordinances that we've done. We say the ones that are failed have to be hooked in, and then the others have 10 years. And that's kind of the language that people have accepted in a lot of other communities. And I think the reason they accept it is they don't necessarily think it's going to happen to a great deal. But it may be possible of extensions in Pittsfield. I just don't know.
So in that instance,
I
where
just,
a septic hasn't failed yet, and we have a 10-year moratorium, I guess, after that for septic systems in use there, they then have to pay the cost of hooking in.
The way things would be written right now, yes.
and see, I'm not too good with that. So I have a instance where I took over a farmhouse in another town. And that farmhouse had a plumbing inspector come out and inspect the system that was there. And it was installed in the 70s, but it was done to a higher code than what was required in the 70s. So he deemed it still good and still able to hook up to it. And that was in the 2000s somewhere. So I mean, that was well over 30 years old, that system.
Yeah.
And it was still deemed usable and acceptable. That's why I kind of have a problem with the 10-year thing myself.
Well, we could leave it, it's up to you guys, but we could leave it, any system that's failed must hook up, and the town would encourage all other systems to connect. It's really up to you. I just thought of this language before the meeting tonight because I know this came up at the council meeting and it was a little more lenient than what was in there, but it didn't quite go all the way.
I would agree with Pete that, obviously if there's a failure, then you're then required to hook up because you're either going to have to pay for a new septic system or you're going to have to pay for a hookup. But I don't think that someone should have to be required to pay for a new hookup to the town sewer and then get hit with sewer bills that they hadn't been planning on. I think it's just, if they have a usable system, they should be able to continue using it.
I agree.
All right, so we can fix that. That's easy enough to do. So if let's say we have people, because I can think of several people that would do this. Let's say the sewer line is going to be extended, and we have people that want to plan for the future to get their lines put in, but still keep their septic system. Is there a way to do that plumbing wise? They would put their lines in, but not hook into them?
I think what I would suggest in that regard would be for the town to hook, to put a stub to the right of way and cap it and stake it off and let them worry about how they're gonna hook up to it later.
Okay.
And that the engineer doing the work should enter the buildings and ensure that the sewer is placed at a depth that they actually could hook into.
Mhm.
Because I've seen that happen plenty of times.
We actually had a few problems on one road with the depth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Remember.
yeah. But a lot of times people don't do that. They don't go in the house to see that, then they don't know. And then when somebody tries to hook to it, everybody's got a pump. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes you get a pump anyways, just from topo, the way things are laid out, but generally you try to make it so most people could go by gravity. But I think this seems workable.
Mhm.
Do you want me to take the lead, Catherine, on fixing this and then send it to you? Or what do you want to do with that?
You have the program in your computer that works. I think
Yes,
that would be good. And maybe we could just change, are you able to change the color all to one color and that's
I
it?
would be happy to do that. Yes. And I found another comma, which I know you guys don't need to hear about those details. So I'll fix that too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how much, do we know how much like the video testing cost? Like say my house is like 60 feet from the middle of the road. Like, do we have any idea how much that would cost? I'm just
Well,
out of curiosity.
yeah, if you hire just they have some like local plumbers that have a push camera that they can bring into the house. That would be fairly reasonable. I'm thinking maybe $100 or something.
Oh,
But you
really?
do it out in the main line, maybe 200, depends on the big main line videos we do are very expensive. They're like $3 to $4 a foot.
Oh.
So it just, because of they're in the mainline sewer, they have to flush it before they can do it. But usually a household plumber person that has a camera, it's not that prohibitive.
So if you have a professional company come to locations, it's usually for everything 175 to 300. If the plumber has a little unit, it's less expensive.
Right. You're right about that. If you hire somebody in particular to do it, it'll cost that amount. But if you have a plumber that actually has one,
Mhm.
that you can do it for less.
Okay.
But that is
Yeah.
a good thing too to bring up because the sewer services can be checked with video before projects are done. But typically the town doesn't go into every single house and video all the services before a project is done. That would be quite an expense to do all that.
Does the town have the equipment and the skills to be able to do that, to check on things?
No. I'm sorry to speak for you.
No,
I
right
was,
ahead, you're correct. We actually tried to do a little bit of that. It's just too much for the size department that we have.
Is it the equipment or the skills that we're lacking?
I think what it is a very specialized thing, the video equipment. It's very expensive. I mean, it's not the push cameras are cheap. You could get a fairly inexpensive push camera, but people get them stuck. into things. And then you've got the liability of where you've gotten that stuck and then you're digging up the street. And it really, for a bigger, if you're gonna hire, more staff, then I don't think it's a dumb idea to have some equipment, but with 2 people doing both sewer and water, it's just no way. There is so much that needs to be done.
This is a specialized service, basically, and we did try to do a little bit with a small camera. It's just too much, and things do get stuck.
Well, we do have a local contractor too that could fill that need as well if things needed to be checked out. So.
We have several, yes.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, like if we knew we were gonna replace, like I said, replace the road, almost give the homeowner the option, hey, we're gonna replace this road. We'll cover like half the cost to get your sewer videoed. If it's bad, then maybe we give them the option to replace it. Something be cheaper for them to do it, say now, if we knew it was gonna collapse in 6 months or something like that. Then they don't have to replace the road on top of their sewer when you're replacing the road anyway. If that makes any sense.
Okay. Okay.
All right, looks like we're done with water and sewer, at least these 2 subjects. And then I'll talk to Annalise because Pete had some questions regarding the water rate increase.
Okay, are we doing that tonight, Catherine?
Oh, well, we can
You'll
talk.
call me later. Okay, so you're done. Are you done with me? Okay, we'll get together soon on these items and nice seeing you guys.
Thanks, Annalise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care.
Thanks.
Okay. So, new business, other ordinances and ordinance amendments to be determined. Catherine, I didn't see anything else underneath there.
No, I didn't put anything. We have quite a few items listed down here. I will note the planning board has been doing training and working on the subdivision ordinance. They have not gotten back to any of these subjects, although I've encouraged them to put a tiny house section into the subdivision ordinance, maybe to anticipate those, or cluster housing, just so that we could have something besides regular subdivisions. Maybe that would be helpful in having a developer develop a subdivision here. But they haven't had, and they do have some road system adequacy items that would be looked at in the subdivision ordinance, which I gave them copies of. So other than that, they have not been working on any of these items.
Are they still meeting only once a month?
They're meeting once a month, yes. They did have their trainings. They were notified that the code enforcement officer, building inspector, plumbing inspector is retiring. And so I told them what the plan was as of the date I notified them, and we're still working on the plan. We have acquired some help, but it will be divided up between more than one person.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, when we started out, 6 people, this was just last week, a week before, 6 people, 6 towns were looking for code officers. Now it's 13.
Oh
So,
boy.
yeah, I know. It's a specialized field. It's like police officers, town managers. There just aren't many of them anymore.
Do you know if the planning board is going to move to having twice a month meetings so they can tackle some of these things, especially if they're going to have to do like site plan reviews? And is the planning board able to issue building permits for small projects?
No, that would have to be done by the certified code officer. So we're working on that
Okay.
plan, which I believe will work, which is going to have to be very organized, because right now any code officers in the area are covering multiple towns already, and then to add on more towns is difficult, to say the least. So we have to honor the fact that people we're working with have other obligations. So we'll do the best we can as we advertise, and we're making up a script to call the larger towns. Again, we started out thinking we could hire somebody from a larger town and get everything done, but that has not worked out to date. So we'll go through more of that besides the regular advertising. But this is, we're gonna have to be highly organized. And so we have told the planning board that they will have assistance from KVCOG, Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, with Joel Greenwood, who lives here in town. And if it's a small amount of assistance, then it's fine. It'll fit under our dues. If it's not, then likely he would become like a town planner if possible, like Skowhegan and Madison did when they lost their people or they had budget issues and had to cut positions. They went over to, the contractual service for the KVCOG, and we might have to do that too. So we're working on all of that. Right now we're okay. But if we get overloaded, it might be difficult. So we got to get this organized better. And we
Do
have
you think we could we work with Skowhegan and try to hire like a full-time person and have them shared between the two towns? That way it might be as a full-time position, because a lot of places have just part-time positions.
So
We worked with another town to do that.
there are a few communities in the state that have done that. I think Skowhegan is all set right now, but that was the next plan. Right now, we just want to make sure we're covered really good for interim. And then I think we do need to look at some other solutions. It's been suggested we hire a full-time code officer, and you did have one and then deleted it due to the cost and everything. And we were in high development at that time too. So we just had to adjust to all this. Not everything gets done the way that we would like it or as fast as we would like it with a part-time person. I did look at the costs, and at the current rate of pay, adding in all the benefits, let's say the position was full-time now, no overtime, it was $93,000. And then if we pay more, like what we're hearing, it probably would have to be, we'd be up in the $110,000 range, which would be difficult, especially when other departments are looking for full-time next year too. And committees are looking for full-time positions from part-time to full-time. So sharing with another town may work. I've done that before with no problem. Done through the town. We would just have to find a partner in the close vicinity that had an employee that would do it. Or could have an employee that would do it. So we've got an option available that we're exploring for something else. So I think we just got to get the interim set up and see how this jives out. And then there could be a possibility out there. We have been contacted by some people that are starting to take their training, but they have no MUBEC experience whatsoever. So we've got the name of the two people, and so we're going to try to get MUBEC people first and then go from there. But this is a problem throughout the state. KVCOG had the full-time position, but it didn't work out, and there was liability issues that happened with that. And they were actually going in to set that up again when their executive director resigned very abruptly with no real notice. And so it took us 4 months to find somebody, because it's hard to fill positions now. So we may be able to get back on track with that. Time will tell here. So interim first, and then we'll go on to all the other solutions, and work on all those before. So we'll come up with something.
Okay, thank you for the update on that. So the sludge management, that's on hold. And then also the pesticide ban item, we kind of have put that aside for now. Offenses, miscellaneous 7A, 7B. I don't actually recall what that is. It's been kind of hanging out there for so long.
Yeah, that was more waste. We either can do this by itself or just leave it. I would hope that we do all the ordinance amendments at once just to save money, basically.
I was gonna say, I think that's why it's just kind of hanging out there waiting for something else to come along to have a hearing with it. Okay. And then the only other thing is our next meeting date, unless you have something else that you want to talk about tonight.
I don't.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up tonight?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm all set.
So looking at the calendar, our next meeting isn't until the 20th of April. No, I'm sorry, that's council. The 27th of April at 6 p.m. again. So with that, we could have a motion to adjourn.
And
Make a motion, we adjourn.
that should actually work in setting up meetings and everything on that on the ordinance. Okay.
Okay. Want to second that, Jason?
Yep, I second that.
And I agree. I want to go eat dinner.
Outnumbered there if you did.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone. And we have a week off next week. No meetings.
Yes, we're,
Council. Gotta love that fifth Tuesday of the month.
we do like that.
We'll be back. Our next council meeting is 6:30 on the 6th.
Great,
Very good. Thank you so much. You have-
Alrighty.
thank you.
All right. Thanks, Catherine. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Pete. Bye, Jason.
See ya.